John Hurley, a former NCAA wrestler and BJJ purple belt built like a tank, once beat up a 12-year-old boy who was trying to bully him when he was just 7 years old. No one knew how he was able to do it, but after many visits to various therapists and psychiatrists, his parents discovered that he had an imbalance of certain hormones. This caused him to gain hysterical strength, as his body produced a ton of adrenaline, making him sort of superhuman for a short period. He was given medication for situations where he would begin to lose control. They all agreed that his energy had to be diverted to physical training, and that he should not be subjected to any sort of fight or flight situation. His parents did the same, and soon John was training with the school wrestling team. They also got him into BJJ, and his mother tried a lot of meditation exercises to ensure John remained calm. It all seemed to work, and somehow, John became a calm man, though everyone who knew him well called him the Hulk. His coaches used to pump him up before any match, knowing that once the Hulk came out, there was no stopping him from victory. They also knew that most of the time, John was in total control. However, they never knew what would happen if he ever exploded. John's college life went smoothly. He found a nice job, and things seemed to take a turn for the better when he married Donna. John Hurley was on his way home from Seattle after wrapping up a successful negotiation that would significantly improve cash flow for the software company he worked for. On top of that, he had the opportunity to see his younger sister Lisa, who had come up from Tacoma, where she attended the University of Washington. They had a good dinner at the Hilton Garden Inn and spent a couple of hours catching up. It had been a few years since he had seen her, and he enjoyed the time they spent together. Now, he was looking forward to seeing Donna, his wife of nearly 5 years. He hated being away from her, but unfortunately, that was just the nature of his job. What he was really looking forward to was their 5-year wedding anniversary, which was on Friday, the day after tomorrow. Unknown to her, he had already made a reservation at a local resort hotel for the weekend and had ordered a blue sapphire sunburst necklace he intended to give her at the hotel. His plan was to pick it up from the jeweler's shop the next afternoon. Right now, though, he wondered where she could be. He called her cell phone before he boarded the flight, but it went straight to voicemail. He also tried calling the house, but that too went to voicemail. Perhaps she's just out shopping with one of her friends, he thought. He thought about Donna and how much he missed her. Standing at just under 5.5 feet, she had long wavy dark hair, hazel eyes, and a dark complexion that looked like a permanent suntan. The only complaint he had was her insane jealousy. She was normally one of the sweetest women he had ever known, but he hated it when she made her false accusations. He loved her too much to ever cheat on her and went out of his way to make sure she realized that. Still, it had gotten so bad that he couldn't even have a business meeting with a female colleague without Donna thinking they were having an affair. He thought he had finally nipped it in the bud when he challenged her to hire a private investigator and have him watched. Maybe, he thought, once she had proof of his fidelity, she would back off and realize her fears were unfounded. He was getting more than a little fed up with her jealousy and false accusations. It's not that he didn't have secrets from her. He did, and her constant harping on his so-called infidelity threatened to bring one of those secrets to light in a very ugly way. He felt his heart rate increase as he thought about her constant harping on the subject. He took a few deep breaths as he had been taught, but to no avail. He felt his face start to burn, and knew he had to get himself under control quickly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small packet of pills. He took one and began to relax after a few minutes, his heartbeat returning to normal. The man sitting next to him eyed him with concern. "Are you okay, sir?" the man asked. "Do you want me to call for someone?" John shook his head. "No, but thanks for asking. It's just an old heart condition. I've got medication for it." The man nodded his head and sat back, but kept an eye on John just in case. Finally, the plane landed. John grabbed his luggage and went to his car sitting in the short-term parking lot. He tried calling Donna again, but got her voicemail. He got the same response when he called the house. Where the hell was she? He asked himself. He started the car and drove home. When he finally pulled into his garage, he noticed Donna's car was gone. He thought it odd that she wouldn't be home since it was about 6:30 p.m. Normally, she was home from work by 5:30 or so. Maybe she had decided to go out with some of her friends from work for a drink, he thought. It didn't happen often, and he never begrudged her that bit of time to blow off steam, but she would generally call or text him to let him know in advance. Moreover, she knew he would be coming home today. Usually, she would be home so they could reconnect when he returned from a trip. He grabbed his things and trudged into the dark house. He put his things away and headed downstairs to see if Donna had left a note. He found nothing and made himself a cup of coffee. This was strange, he thought. She always let him know when she would be out for a bit, so why was there no note? He pondered this as he sipped on his coffee. Suddenly, his phone rang. He saw it was from Donna, so he answered. "Donna," he asked, "where are you?" "I'm sorry, John. I was getting ready for tonight and didn't realize you had called until just a few minutes ago." "What were you getting ready for?" John asked. "It's a little surprise. Some friends and I wanted to surprise you when you got home tonight. Why don't you come on over so we can celebrate?" "Sure, where are you?" She gave him an address, and he wrote it down. "What is this, anyway? Is it a club or a restaurant or something?" "An old friend of mine has a private club at his house, and we decided to put something together for you, kind of like a combination welcome home and anniversary party." "That sounds like fun," John said. Donna laughed at that. "Yes, I promise it'll be a lot of fun. Wear something casual, okay?" "Okay, I'll see you soon." "See you, babe," she said before ending the call. Strange, he thought. She didn't tell him she loved him. But yet this was supposed to be a surprise anniversary party of some sort. Still, there was something about the way she spoke that made him wonder what was going on. He went upstairs, showered, shaved, and dressed in blue jeans and a polo shirt. He looked up the address on Google Maps and saw that it was in a fairly rough area of town. Who did she know that lived out there? He wondered. He knew most of the people in the insurance office where she worked and didn't think any of them lived out there. So who was this friend? He knew she once ran with a group of fairly rough types when she was younger but thought she had outgrown them. He locked up, got in his car, and punched the address into his Google map. He backed out and followed the GPS device to the address and was a bit shocked when he reached the destination. A medium-sized house sat in the middle of a lot that was surrounded by a chain-link fence. He noticed the pickups and motorcycles parked around the place and started to get a bit concerned since he didn't recognize any of the vehicles. He pulled in, parked, and went to the front door. A large man wearing a t-shirt and jeans opened when he knocked on the door. John noticed the beer in his hand and heard rap music coming from inside. "Yeah?" the man asked. "I'm John Hurley, and my wife Donna asked me to meet her here. I hope I have the right address." The man smiled, but John wasn't convinced it was out of genuine friendship. The man reached up and shook John's hand. "You must be Donna's old man. You can call me Jabari. We've been expecting you. Come on in." John walked in and looked around to see several other large men in the front room. "Hey, everyone, the man of the hour is finally here," Jabari said. The other men nodded and smiled at John. They may have been smiling, but John didn't feel any real friendship here. "Where's Donna?" John asked. "Oh, she's downstairs getting ready for the main event," Jabari said, causing the others to chuckle. "Want a beer?" Yeah, sure," John said. One of the others handed John a bottle of cold beer. "Thanks," John said as he opened it and took a tentative sip. "So, what is this main event?" he asked Jabari. "The surprise. Your old lady wanted to do something special for your anniversary and asked us to help her out. I'm afraid you have me at a disadvantage. Who are you guys?" Well, that over there is Chad, Jabari said, pointing at one of the men in the room. Over there is Jamal, and that guy standing next to him is Tyrone, he added. That big fella back there, we call him Bull. I'm sure you can understand why. John saw the very large, muscular black man standing by the kitchen table. All of them looked to be as mean as snakes, and John saw the large knife sheathed in a scabbard on Jamal's hip. Yeah, and you're all Donna's friends. Yep, Chad said. I've been for a while. Haven't seen her much since she married you, though. She never mentioned any of you to me before, John said. I'm not surprised. Most people try to avoid us as much as they can. And you have a private club here? John asked. Yeah, Jabari said. Down in the basement. Built it ourselves. We like to get together from time to time, have a few drinks, bring in some entertainment. The others chuckled at that, but John's hackles were raised. Something bad was about to happen, but he didn't know what. John heard footsteps coming up from the basement. She's ready, a sixth man said as he walked into the front room. Is this her, old man? Yeah, Jabari said. John, this here's Jake. He'll escort you down. What's going to happen? John asked. A little surprise. I promise it'll be an evening you won't forget. The others chuckled, but John was nervous. It'll be all right. Come on, Donna is waiting for you. John walked over to Jake, who led him downstairs. Happy anniversary, Jabari said as John began his descent. When he got downstairs, he saw a small bar in one corner of the basement and a well-lit raised area that occupied one end of the room. A curtain was hung across the end of the area, which he realized was probably a stage. What concerned him the most was the bed in the middle of the stage and the camera mounted on a tripod a few feet back. There were several neon beer signs hanging on the walls, and the room was fairly dark, like a bar or a club. A pool table was placed at the opposite end of the basement, and John saw a few tables in the room. A jukebox occupied one area of the wall, and John realized that was the source of the music. Two other men stood in the room and watched John as he entered. Jake led him to a chair that sat in front of the stage. The chair sat next to a table, but faced the stage. Have a seat, Jake said, pointing to the chair. Where's Donna? John asked. She'll be out shortly. Go on, sit down. You can put your beer on the table if you want. John set the beer down and looked around. Something inside told John he needed to get the hell out of there. But he suspected the 5 men upstairs were not about to let him go. Plus, he was worried about Donna. What would they do to her if he ran out? He took one last sip and placed his bottle on the table. The moment he sat in the chair, Jake and the other 2 men quickly grabbed his arms and zip-tied them to the arms. What the hell is going on? John asked, getting angry. The men ignored him and zip-tied his ankles to the legs of the chair. Get me out of here right now, John demanded. Shut up, a hole, he heard his wife say. He looked up and saw Donna wearing nothing but a tiny thong and a half-bra. What the hell is this? John demanded. Why are you dressed like that? Who are these guys? This is to celebrate our anniversary, she spat. These guys are my friends, and they're going to help me teach you a lesson about cheating. She threw a picture on his lap, and he looked. It was a photo someone had taken of him eating dinner with his sister. I've never cheated on you. You've got this all wrong, she screamed. Suddenly, John saw stars as one of the men who tied him to the chair hit him in the face. John shook his head and closed his eyes. Stop it, Donna told the man who backed off. I'll be the one who teaches him his lesson. She turned back to her husband. Donna, stop this right now, and we can discuss this. It's not what it looks like. Oh, really? She asked. It looks to me like you're enjoying yourself with that blonde floozy. So if you can enjoy yourself, so can I. But unlike you, I'm not going to keep it a secret. With that, she turned away and stepped on the stage. Okay, boys, It's showtime." John tried to object, but one of the men put a ball gag in his mouth, preventing him from saying anything. He tried to fight the man but was unsuccessful. By now, all the others had made their way downstairs. Jabari stood next to him and whispered in his ear, "Nothing personal, but Donna is an old friend, so we decided to help her teach you a lesson. Now sit and enjoy the show. Don't try to be a hero. Once she's done, we'll let you go. Maybe she'll go with you. But that's up to her." John tried to say something, but the gag in his mouth prevented it. "Just relax. Take your medicine like a man." He stood back up and nodded at Chad, who stood by the jukebox. Chad pressed a button, and a song began playing. As the music began, Donna started dancing, twirling around like a stripper. She kicked her shoes off, then slowly removed her remaining clothes. "You like this, lover boy?" she sneered at John. "Did your little blonde do this for you?" She danced a bit more and then laughed as she tossed the tiny thong at John. "I really hope you like this, lover boy, because you're never going to touch me ever again. Come here, boys, and show little Johnny how a real man treats a woman." She laughed as all the men, except for Jamal, surrounded her. As John watched, they stripped off their clothes, and Donna knelt down. John shook his head and tried screaming no through the gag. He noticed that Jamal stood by John's chair, his arms across his chest. He was obviously there to keep John under control. Donna stood up and led the men to the bed on the stage. She sat on the bed and looked at John. "This will teach you to cheat on me, you a hole," she growled. She laid down on the bed, and two of the men stood by her head as Jabari looked back at John for a moment. "Nothing personal, but Donna is the best I've ever had." He laughed and turned back to her. "Ready, baby?" "Yeah, Jabari. Now take me again and make my husband watch." Jabari laughed and started being intimate with her. John, however, wasn't turned on by the action taking place on the stage, just the opposite. He tried to control himself with the breathing exercises he had been taught in his martial arts training, but felt the rage beginning to build up inside him. John could see her and felt sick to his stomach. She was right about one thing. He would never touch her again. He thought the degradation was over when he saw Donna get up on her knees, but he was wrong. She looked at him and laughed. "Don't worry, honey," she said sarcastically. "We're just getting warmed up, aren't we, boys?" The men laughed at that. John looked up at Jamal, who was smiling as he watched the show. John wondered why he wasn't participating in the action. Jamal looked down at him, frowned, and took John's head in his hands. "Watch them, not me," he growled as he forced John to look at the stage. John felt the rage continuing to build inside him as Donna continued her actions. "You want to see just how nasty I really can be. Just so you know, I'll probably get pregnant tonight," she said with a smirk. "I'm sure you noticed no one used a condom, and I've been off my pills for the last few weeks. Don't worry, I used a diaphragm whenever you had sex with me, so you don't have to worry about it being yours. But you will raise this child as yours. And if you refuse, I will divorce you and wreck you. I will take away everything from you. I will make you a pariah in society and label you as a domestic abuser and a cuck." John shook his head, his anger blurring his vision. "You're probably wondering why Jamal hasn't done me, aren't you?" she asked. "You see, Jamal prefers men over girls. And after tonight, you will too." They all laughed as John felt his face get red hot. He turned and looked at Jamal, and noticed he had unzipped his jeans. "I promise you'll love it." Then it happened. John exploded and lost control. The next thing he knew, he was standing in the middle of a pile of moaning bodies on the floor. Jamal was screaming in pain, his left hand pinned to the table by a knife buried to the hilt. He felt the pain in his arms and legs and saw blood dripping from where the zip ties had secured him to the chair. Looking up, he saw Donna wide-eyed and trembling. "Please don't hurt me," she begged. "Oh, now you're scared of me. Don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you, but I promise you will feel my wrath, and I will make sure I multiply the pain I suffered tonight and return it to you." Keeping his eye on her, John pulled his phone out of his pants pocket and dialed 911. When he finished, he put his phone away and looked at her. "You stupid woman," he growled. "John, I've got you dead to rights. You cheated on me with that blonde. I was just getting even with you. So you got a PI to follow me in Seattle, is that right?" he asked. "Yes, and I got that photo," she replied nervously. "Did you bother to read the report that came with it?" John asked. She shook her head. "No, all I did was look at the photo." "That was my sister, you ignorant woman," John yelled. "The last time we saw her was at our wedding. She's a senior at the University of Washington in Tacoma. She came up to visit me in Seattle, and we had dinner. That's all, just dinner. So you saw the picture and didn't even ask me about it. You just made an assumption, like you always do. Well, guess what? You're right about one thing. I'm never touching you again. I'll see you in jail, and then I'm divorcing you. I'm glad you did this and pulled the final straw. We're finished." "No, John, please don't do that," she begged, walking toward him. "Trust me, Donna, you have no idea what I want to do to you right now. So, for your own safety and physical well-being, stay away from me." "John, please," she begged. "I made a mistake, that's all." "Yeah, you made a mistake all right. I'll teach you what happens when you make a planned mistake. You played your part, Donna. Now, starting today, I will make you pay." By then, the police had arrived, and several officers came downstairs after breaking the front door down. They each had their guns drawn and looked around at the carnage. They quickly moved through the basement, checking each of the men. One officer pulled the knife out of Jamal's hand and watched as he slumped to the floor. A sergeant approached John. "Did you do all this?" he asked. John nodded his head. "Why?" the sergeant asked. "Look at the video, and you'll know why," John said, pointing at the camera. "Check out that video," the sergeant told one of the officers. The officer looked at the video briefly and motioned for the sergeant. After quickly scanning the video, the sergeant came back to John. "Okay, it looks like self-defense on your part, but I'll need a full statement, and you need to get checked out." By then, ambulances had arrived, and paramedics began taking the men upstairs on gurneys. A plain-clothed detective arrived and was looking around the room, talking to the officers. After looking through the video, he came over to the sergeant and John. "I'm Detective Jones. You must be Mr. Hurley." "Yes, that's me. I've briefly looked at the video. I agree with Sergeant Smith here. It appears you acted out of self-defense. Tell me what happened." John recalled the events of the last few hours. The detective took notes as John spoke. "How did you manage to break out of that chair?" Jones asked. "And how are you able to take all these men down? They all appear to be much bigger than you." "I have a medical condition. I've had it since I was a kid. There's a name for it, but I can't pronounce it. The bottom line is that under certain conditions, my adrenaline levels go through the roof, and I basically lose it, for lack of a better term. I have a prescription that helps me keep it under control, and my martial arts training also helps me keep my cool. This is only the second time in my life something like this has ever happened." "Do you have that medication with you?" Jones asked. John nodded his head. "I keep it with me at all times. I only take it when it's needed, which fortunately isn't very often." Jones asked one of the other officers to bring a bottle of water, which he did. "Maybe you should take one now," Jones said, handing John the water. John pulled the small packet out of his pocket and swallowed a pill with the water Jones had given him. A few seconds later, John felt much better. "Are you okay now?" Jones asked. "Yes, thanks." "Do you remember what you did here?" Jones asked. "No, I don't, John said, shaking his head. Joan showed John the video. He was shocked at what he saw. It was like watching a Hulk movie, only this was real life. He saw himself roar, then break out of the chair. In the video, he grabbed Jamal's knife out of its scabbard and plunged it into the bigger man's left hand, pinning it to the table. The other men came after him as Donna sat scared. In less than a minute, John had taken all of the other men down. "You don't remember doing any of this?" Jones asked. "No, I don't. Honestly, I never thought I even had it in me to do something like this." "What's the last thing you remember?" Jones asked. "That man getting ready to do something awful to me," John said. "Saying he was going to force you to perform at the BJ?" Jones asked. John nodded his head, tears falling down his face. "Yes, he was going to do me. And my wife was in on it." "I see," Jones said, looking across the room where another officer was taking Donna's statement. By then, the officers had covered her with a blanket. "I want you to go to the hospital and get checked out, Mr. Hurley. I'll speak with you a bit more after I've had a chance to collect all the evidence. I take it you want to press charges?" "Absolutely," John said. "What about your wife?" Jones asked. "Do you want to press charges on her as well? Especially against her. She's the instigator of all this." "Very well," Jones said. He took John's contact information as a paramedic checked out his wrists and ankles. "I'll be in touch, Mr. Hurley. I'd appreciate it if you didn't leave town." "I'm not going anywhere," John said. Detective Jones nodded his head and gave instructions to the officers, then went to see Donna, who was still being questioned by an officer. A couple of minutes later, John heard her wail as she was cuffed and led out of the room. "Please, John," she cried, "don't let them take me away. Please tell them it was all a big misunderstanding." John shook his head and looked the other way. After everyone was finished with the questioning, John drove to the hospital to get checked out. A few hours later, he drove home, his cuts dressed, cleaned, and bandaged. On the way, he realized he hadn't eaten since he left Seattle and went through a drive-thru for a burger. Once home, he ate, then called his boss, Jim Rollins, to explain the situation. "Dan, John, I'm sorry to hear that. Look, why don't you bring the signed contract and then take the next week off? You've got plenty of vacation time coming." "Thanks, Jim, I appreciate that," John said. After he calmed down, John showered and went to bed. The next day, he went to the jewelry shop and canceled the order for Donna's necklace. He ended up paying a small restocking fee but got most of his money back. He also canceled the hotel reservation and had the charges reversed. He then called around and set an appointment to see Jenny Hawkins, attorney at law, about a divorce on Friday. He had just finished eating lunch when his phone rang. He looked and saw it was Donna's parents. He took a deep breath and answered. "Hello." "John, what the hell is going on?" asked Mara, his mother-in-law. "Donna called from the county jail. She said she's been arrested, and they're holding her without bail. Did you do something?" John couldn't believe the nerve of this woman. He counted to 10 and took a few deep breaths before answering. "Did she tell you why she was arrested?" John asked. "She said it was all some kind of misunderstanding on your part," Marcia said. "On my part? Really? You mean she didn't tell you that she plotted to have me tied up, forced me to watch her have sex with multiple men, and then was going to have me sexually assaulted by one of her male friends? Didn't she tell you about that?" "What? Why would she do such a thing?" "Because she saw a picture of me having dinner with my little sister and thought I was having an affair. The woman is nuts, and tomorrow I'm seeing an attorney, and I'm filing for divorce." "You can't be serious. Look, I know you're probably upset, but surely you can understand how she would feel. What would you do if you saw a picture of her eating lunch with a man?" "I would ask her about it. I wouldn't fly off the handle the way she did. Look, Mara, you have no idea what your daughter did, and there's no way in hell I can overlook it. I've been dealing with her insane jealousy since we got married. I'm tired of it. It ends now. As far as the divorce is concerned, let me ask you, Mara, if we reverse the roles, and I tie her up and force her to watch me have sex with other women, and then have her assaulted by one of them, would you still ask your daughter to remain married to me? Mara had no answer to that. Don't be a hypocrite, Mara. You know very well that what I am doing to your daughter is absolutely right. With that, he ended the call. When she called back, he sent the call straight to voicemail. Curious, he went into the second bedroom, where he and Donna had their home computer set up. He sat down at her computer and fired it up. He already knew her passwords, so he got into her desktop easily. He opened her email client and was shocked at what he saw. He found an email from something called Jenkins Investigations and opened it up. Attached to the email was a document and a photo. The photo was of him and his sister eating dinner, the same one she threw in his face earlier. The report stated that target John Hurley, meaning him, had eaten dinner with what appeared to be a much younger woman. The report went on to say that after dinner, the woman left the hotel, and Hurley went to his room. There was more. The report clearly stated that the woman was Lisa Hurley, a senior attending the University of Washington at Tacoma, and according to public records, was John's youngest sister. At no time was Hurley with a woman for the purposes of illicit sex, and at no time during our observation did Hurley ever engage in any inappropriate behavior with anyone, male or female, the report concluded. If Donna had bothered to read the report, she would have known he was innocent of cheating on her, but as usual, she simply saw the photo and came to her own false conclusion. He printed that out and kept digging. He saw emails from her to Jamal, in which she falsely claimed that her husband was cheating on her and she wanted revenge. He saw several emails from Jamal telling her about a website and how she could get her revenge. As he read, he felt his blood pressure begin to rise. What happened to him last night was carefully scripted, and he realized she intentionally planned to have him assaulted, videotaped, and his video published on a website. He printed off the emails and kept digging. He checked her browser history and found that she had visited several sites similar to the one she was in contact with. Looking at the site that Jamal recommended, he saw several sample videos where other men, presumably husbands, had been tied down and forced to watch as their wives had sex with several men, all the while putting them down. The final humiliation was making the husbands engage with Jamal. He instantly recognized the men in the videos: Jabari, Chad, Tyrone, Jake, Jamal, Bull, and the other two men whose names he never heard mentioned. So they were already working for such a website. What shocked him even more was that the videos on the site were available to anyone who paid a premium fee. John wasn't stupid. He had seen online spicy videos before and knew there had to be a release form filled out, giving site owners permission to publish the videos. He was never given that opportunity and wondered if the other men had signed such a form. He picked up his phone and called Detective Jones. "Jones," the detective said when he answered. "Detective, this is John Hurley. I have some information here you may find interesting," John said. "Can you come to my house?" "Sure, let me finish what I'm doing, and I'll be right over." "Thanks," John said before ending the call. As he waited for Jones, he performed a search to see if he could tell who owned the site. The registration was done in a way to keep the owner's name private, but he knew that a law enforcement agency could subpoena the record. He also knew which company hosted the site. He printed that out for Jones. About a half hour later, Jones rang the doorbell. "Thanks for coming, Detective," John said, opening the door. "You have something for me?" Jones asked. "Yes, in my computer room," John said. Jones followed him upstairs and looked over the printouts John gave him. That corroborated what we found at the house. From what we saw, they'd done this to a number of men. "What about release forms?" John asked. We found release forms signed by the wives. Even your wife signed a release form. We're still going through everything, though." "So she knew this was going on the internet?" John asked. "Looks that way," Jones said. "But what about the husbands?" John asked. "I don't recall seeing anything like that. But like I said, we're still going through all the evidence. Look, I'm going to have to confiscate your wife's computer for evidence." "Go ahead. I'd like to keep these printouts for my attorney, though. The files are still there in her email." Jones nodded his head after giving it a bit of thought. "Sure, but don't destroy them." After Jones left with Donna's computer, John sat at his machine and had a brainstorm. He began searching some of the video sites and found several fairly lengthy videos produced by the site. He scanned through them and saw that in each one, the husband was treated much as he was while the wife took on all of the other men, except for Jamal. Each video ended with Jamal engaging in sex with the husbands. He looked back through the email thread he printed from Donna's computer and read it carefully. There it was in black and white. "Just so you know," Jabari wrote, "we usually end the session with some sex involving the husband. Are you okay with that?" "Oh, definitely," Donna wrote back. "How far does it go?" "As far as you want, so long as your husband agrees to it," Jabari said. "I'd like to see him get screwed," Donna wrote. "Can you do that?" "Sure," Jabari wrote back. "But he has to agree." "Don't worry about that. I'll make him agree." John felt his blood pressure begin to rise and stepped back from the computer, taking deep breaths. Unfortunately, that wasn't working, so he took another pill and went downstairs. He couldn't stand to be exposed to any more of this. The next day, he went to see Jenny about a divorce. He made a copy of Donna's emails and took them with him. One copy would be for Jenny, and the other he would present to Donna's parents. He arrived at the office a few minutes early and was escorted right in. After the introductions, he explained his situation to Jenny and showed her the email thread between Donna and Jabari. Jenny listened without interruption, making notes as he spoke. She read the email thread and shook her head. "You know, I thought I had seen it all. Fortunately for you, this state allows for divorce on the grounds of adultery, cruelty, and abuse. I think this covers about all three of those situations. You say she was arrested and is being held without bail." "Yes," John said. Jenny turned to her computer and nodded her head a few moments later. "I see here that she was arraigned yesterday and was slapped with a whole slew of charges: spousal abuse, sexual assault, conspiracy to commit assault, fraud, and illegal imprisonment, for starters. Apparently, the judge felt she's dangerous enough to keep in custody. It also looks like her accomplices are also being held on multiple charges very much like hers. And you say these men operate a website that posts this trash to the internet for money?" "Yes, I found a few of their videos, and they're all pretty much the same thing." "Did they explain this to you before they tied you down?" Jenny asked. "No," John said. "Did they have you sign a release form?" she asked again. "No. They made it sound like it was some kind of an anniversary party or surprise. They never said anything about the sex or selling videos on the internet." "Well, I think we not only have a solid case against your wife, but we have a case against the men who did this to you as well as the hosting provider," she said. As John watched, Jenny did a few more things on her computer before saying anything further. "Do you know if they offered your wife any royalties for this video?" she asked. "No, I haven't seen anything like that," John said. "It looks like that website gets a lot of traffic. I'll bet they make a ton of money off this filth. Okay, here's what I'd like to do. I'll write up the divorce papers asking for 90% of everything. On top of that, we'll ask for the house and everything we can get our hands on. The judge may not go along with that, and it's possible we'll have to negotiate our way down. That's just a starting point. We'll use this email thread and the fact that she's being held without bail as leverage. If they do release her, I'll get a restraining order against her and her accomplices, but I don't think you have much to worry about there. You say Detective Jones has the video they made as evidence, and it never got to the internet?" she asked. "He has the video. As far as I know, it never got to the internet, but it would have gotten to the web," he said. "Oh yes," he told her. She nodded her head. "Okay," she said, taking notes. "I'll get with him about that video. We'll have her served, and if you want, I'll file a civil claim against the website owners and the hosting provider." "Yes, that would be good," John said. She looked at him before continuing. "Do yourself a favor, don't visit your wife. Stay as far away from her as possible. Don't even think about what she did. Let me and the authorities deal with it. From what you told me, you'd be better off not even thinking about her. If you want, I can set you up with a therapist to help you deal with this. Would that be all right?" John nodded his head. "Yeah. I've tried everything I know, but it just doesn't seem to be enough. Normally, the breathing and the medication keep me under control, but I've never had to deal with anything like this." "I understand," Jenny said. She handed him a card. "I'll give her a call right now if you want." "Please," John said. She picked up her phone, called, and made an appointment for him. When she finished, she smiled and looked at John. "Dr. Sykes said she can see you this afternoon at 4:00 p.m. Will that work for you?" John looked at his watch, then nodded his head. "That'll work. Thanks." "Good. Here's some things you need to take care of right away," she added, handing him a sheet of paper with a list of things he needed to get done. Most of it involved the bank, so he decided to take care of that after his appointment with Jenny. "I'll take care of this right away," he said. "Terrific. Listen, I know this has been rough on you, so I want you to rest, relax, and let us take care of things. You understand?" "I do," he said. "Good. Don't worry, John. This will all work out, and you can move ahead with your life." He thanked her and left. After leaving a healthy retainer, he went to the bank, paid, and closed out their joint credit cards. He withdrew everything but 10%, then opened a new account in his name only and applied for a new credit card. From there, he stopped at Donna's parents' house and explained to them what happened, showing them the email chain between Donna and Jabari. They were shocked when he told them what he knew. "This is sick. I can't believe she'd actually do something like this. Are you sure you didn't cheat on her, John?" "Mara, I love Donna with all my heart, and I never even thought about cheating on her. She saw a picture of me having dinner with my baby sister and thought we were having an affair. She didn't even bother to read the report. If she had, this probably wouldn't have happened." She shook her head. "I don't know what to tell you, John," she said. "I'm truly sorry this happened to you. I'm sorry I married her. Just do me a favor and stay in touch, okay? We've always thought of you as the son we never had." "I'll do that, Mara. By the way, her car is still at that guy's place. I'll give you her keys if you want to go pick it up. I'll bring her stuff by later today or this weekend sometime." "Okay, thanks." He handed her the keys and gave her the address. By then, he had just enough time to get to his appointment with Dr. Sykes. Dr. Sykes, Rhonda to her friends and patients, listened to John's story and said nothing until he was finished. "I've heard about your condition, but I've never met anyone who was actually diagnosed with it. And you say you've been using martial arts training to help keep it under control." "Yes, breathing exercises mostly. That along with medication to help my blood pressure. It usually works pretty quickly, and until recently, I've hardly had to use it at all." "Are you still taking martial arts training?" she asked. "Yes," John said. "Maybe we should take a look at some exercises in meditation. Would you be open to that?" "I would." "Good. We've got a lot of work to do, John, but I think we can help you through this without any more medication." "I would prefer that." He left and went back home, where he bagged up Donna's things, including all their wedding photos and her wedding dress. He looked around and boxed up some trinkets she had collected over the years. They meant nothing to him now, and he wanted nothing in the house that would remind him of her. That weekend, he changed the locks on the house, took Donna's things to her parents, and did his usual weekend yard work. On Sunday, he found an app that said it would help calm him, so he downloaded it to his phone and listened to the sound of rain as he went through a regimen of breathing exercises. After a half hour of that, he felt like his old self and decided to go into work the next day. Things were quiet for John over the next few weeks. He went to work, went home, watched television, relaxed, and went to bed. The place seemed much quieter without Donna, and he enjoyed being able to do what he wanted without her constant accusations. The therapy sessions with Rhonda helped quite a bit, and he found the relaxation techniques she suggested helped a lot. He stayed in touch with Jenny, who said she was going to wait until after Donna's trial to have her served. Her thinking was that the divorce would go smoother if she was a convicted felon. The day of Donna's trial came around, and he was asked to testify, which he was more than happy to do. The jury was shocked when the DA presented his evidence, which included John's testimony. They were so shocked that they came back with guilty verdicts on all charges in just a couple of hours. The judge had no sympathy for her either, sentencing her to the maximum possible under state law, 20 years. She would be eligible for parole in 15 years. The judge said as she was being let out, a process server stepped forward. He verified her identity and handed her a manila envelope. "You've been served," he said. Defeated, Donna signed the papers and handed them back. "Have a good day," the server said as he accepted them. She looked at John with tears in her eyes, but he simply looked away. The deputies escorted her out and took her to the van that would transport her to the state women's prison. The trials against Jabari and his crew took quite a bit longer. Detective Jones found a treasure trove of evidence which suggested they had victimized up to 15 men over the last 13 months. They found what appeared to be releases signed by the husbands they had targeted, but the men they had tracked down said the releases were signed after the fact and under duress. Making matters worse, the site owners had also posted personal information about the men they targeted. At least 3 of the victims had committed suicide as a result of what was done to them. By the time it was all said and done, all of the men involved were sentenced to 25 years of hard labor. The site was torn down, and all of the victims, or at least all of the men Jenny's team of attorneys could locate, received a huge sum of money which bankrupted Jabari and his associates. The hosting providers settled with the men, which added to the pot. John nearly broke down crying when Jenny presented him with a $2 million check. While he appreciated the restitution, the money did very little to soothe his broken heart. "You're a good man, John Hurley," she told him. "There are lots of good women out there who would love to be with you. You'll find her." "Thanks, Jenny. Maybe one day." John continued seeing his therapist, who helped him deal with his issues. Over the next 2 years, he buried himself in his work and dated periodically. But it was only in the last couple of months that he dated the same woman more than once. "He's got a lot of issues to deal with," his therapist wrote as she transcribed her notes. "But on the upside, he hasn't had any more episodes and seems to be moving forward. I think he'll do just fine in the long run. At least I hope so," Rhonda thought. A few days later, John met a man at a local bar. The discussion took not more than 10 minutes. John walked out to his car and waited. The man walked near him and picked up the small briefcase that John had already placed on the ground. Both men looked at each other and walked away with a nod. 5 days later, John learned from Jenny that Donna had gotten pregnant from her actions on that fateful night, but had suffered a miscarriage when 3 large women attacked her in the bath. She was bleeding heavily and was in the hospital. Jenny also said that Donna would never be able to conceive ever again. Likes of her should never breed, John thought to himself. 7 days later, Jabari and Chad were killed when a huge riot broke out in the prison during lunch hours. 2 days later, Tyrone was found hanging in his cell. 3 days later, Jake was trying to climb the prison wall with 2 other inmates when he was shot and killed by the prison guards. The other 2 prisoners somehow were unharmed, and as for the guards, they were very compliant and never tried to climb the wall. Bull and 2 others died under mysterious circumstances. As per the autopsy, they were poisoned. Jamal was the luckiest of them all, at least that is what he thought, when he was able to escape the prison with 2 other inmates and cross the American border to Mexico. What he did not know is that he never escaped. His partners in crime took him straight to Baja. He was eating at a local diner where he met a beautiful woman. They danced together, and she offered to take him to her home. Jamal was grinning ear to ear when she took him to her bedroom. It was dark, and suddenly he was hit behind the head, and everything went dark. A few moments later, Jamal opened his eyes and found himself tied to a chair. A man walked to him and held a phone in front of him. "Hello, Jamal. Hope you remember me. I guess my friend has treated you well. I have asked my friend to be gentle with you and stretch the night as far as possible, just like you told me once. I promise you'll love it." Jamal tried to scream, but his mouth was gagged. A few moments later, Jamal heard the roaring sound of a chainsaw. A man dressed in a yellow raincoat and a gas mask on his face stood before him. The man took the chainsaw and walked closer and asked, "Do you like stew?" Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.